Hi, I'm Clark Erzine, and I'm going to be discussing the history of human intelligence studies. Francis Galton was the first person to create tests specifically designed to measure a person's mental abilities. He believed that intelligence was innate and hereditary, and that there was a lot of variation in intelligence within the population. So he set up an anthropometric laboratory at the London International Health Exhibition of 1884, where over 9,000 people participated in sensory tests like reaction time and ability to discriminate between colors. Physical measurements like height and head size were also measured, and there were even some strength tests that measured how hard one could squeeze or pull something. The goal of the study was to find a correlation between high test scores and success in the real world. So if someone is really successful, they were probably very intelligent and should therefore score high on these mental tests. Galton's hypothesis was that people with great intelligence must have strong, efficient nervous systems, so they should have large brains, fast reaction times, and be able to distinguish fine sensory details from one another. The more things we can perceive, the more knowledge we are able to absorb. However, Galton's results failed to find evidence that high test scores could predict real-world success, showing that his tests were not appropriate ways to measure intelligence. The French psychologist Alfred Binet performed tests similar to Galton's on his two young daughters. He observed that as long as they were paying attention, their reaction times didn't seem to differ from those of adults. And on one particular sensory set, his 5-year-old daughter even performed better than the average adult. So Binet concluded that Galton's methods for measuring intelligence weren't useful because they couldn't even produce different results between young children and adults. He believed that measuring performance on more complex tasks involving things like language skills and abstract reasoning would provide more accurate assessments of a person's intelligence. Binet began to focus even more on intelligence after a law was passed in France that mandated all children to attend school. This was creating problems for children with mental disabilities and keep up with their peers. Special schools were created to help these children, and not long after, the government realized the need for an accurate method of testing for mental disabilities. Binet developed such a method with the help of a man named Theodore Simon. Binet and Simon realized that age was a significant factor in the development of certain cognitive skills. They noticed that children with disabilities were often able to perform the same tasks as normal children, but it took them longer to acquire the skills needed to perform them. In 1905, they created a test consisting of 30 problems that gradually got more difficult as the test went on. In later editions of the test, each problem became tied to a specific age based on the age that most children were able to first solve it. After taking the test, a child was given a mental age based on his or her results. Children were generally considered to be qualified for special schooling if their mental age was more than 2 years below their actual age. But Binet acknowledged the limitations of the test. He didn't believe that a test concerned with only quantitative measurements such as his could ever accurately describe true intelligence. He believed the only practical application of the test was to diagnose children with learning disabilities. He also recognized that the test was culturally biased and should not be used to assess children raised in different environments. Finally, he recognized that the test was flawed in that different combinations of correct answers could produce the same mental age in two different children, without taking note of the differences in their individual strengths and weaknesses. Another psychologist named William Stern noticed that as children with disabilities got older, the gap between their real age and mental age tended to increase. Young children only 1 mental year behind their real age might fall to more than 2 years behind by their teenage years. He suggested dividing mental age by real age, so a 5-year-old with a mental age of 4 would be equivalent to a 10-year-old with a mental age of 8. Using this new scoring system, we could now measure superior intelligence as well. Louis Terman from Stanford University took this idea and ran with it. He revised the test and decided to multiply the IQ scores by 100 to get rid of decimals. It soon became the most common intelligence test in the United States and is known as the Stanford Binet test. There has been a great deal of interest surrounding the study of intelligence ever since the first intelligence test was created by Binet and Simon at the beginning of the 20th century. Since then, many new theories and tests have been created. Today, the most commonly used test in the U.S. is the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. Many modern tests still use the IQ scoring system, with the median score being 100. One standard deviation from this score is equal to 15 points. So about 68% of the population scores between 85 and 115, and about 95% fall within the range of 70 and 130. The criticisms of modern intelligence tests are very much the same as the ones that Binet gave to his own tests. The test can measure ability to perform a number of different mental skills, but they can't identify a person's true intelligence. And in spite of best efforts to create a gender and culture neutral test, there has been evidence that suggests these tests can be biased towards certain groups of people.